Hello and welcome to Julie's Unknown. And today I have a wonderful guest, Krystle, who is going to be chatting with us like who knows what at this point. I always like try to plan my podcast interviews, and then what ends up happening is it goes in a different direction. So we met in a clubhouse room. I think it's been like, yeah, maybe like 2-3 years. And I remember I tapped into a clubhouse room for the first time, and she was hosting, and I loved her energy. And I, as a projector, when I went in to like share my story, I felt really seen, and like she understood like who I was just by saying I'm a Scorpio projector with an Aries rising, and like just those small little things she like got me. And I'm like, who is this person? And then we started following each other on Instagram. And I have also worked with her with the variables, which has been incredible. And now I have her here on my podcast. So, Krystle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, and thank you for that lovely recap of our history. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Um, yeah, Clubhouse days when I like Leah and I had a clubhouse with the other person that was on there too. It was like we were in this little tiny box, and the only people we could chat with at that time in like 2021 was like random strangers on the internet. So
That
yeah.
is true. Yeah, it was around that time where I think a lot of us just connected through the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy to be here. First off, thank you for inviting me. And I my full first and foremost, I'll repeat my name. My name is Krystle, and I am a human design reader and also intuitive. I also read the Akashic records. So I'm into a lot of witchy things. I really just refer to myself as like a guide. I don't really identify with honestly any particular hat. I came online 3 years ago to be of service to the collective because I knew what was happening. And I've been here ever since.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that little introduction, the way you introduced yourself. It's beautiful. Um,
Thank you.
and I know that, yeah, like it's really interesting because in the clubhouse, you did open the records. And I
Oh
remember
yeah.
that. Yeah, I remember that it would be, I think, for like new moons and full moons that you
Hmm.
would open the records. Um,
Totally forgot about that.
yeah. And I find like the Akashic records are extremely powerful in so many ways. Do you mind like explaining the readers a little bit of like what it is?
Um, in the most simplest form, I look at it as like the like quantum folder of like Google. Like just it it's the past, present, and future.
Wow.
It's like the eternal library that you can kind of like pull a book off the shelf and kind of speak to the other side that sometimes is hard to connect to. And the Akashic Records is like a prayer that you have to say that basically opens a portal to that other side where you can connect with masters, teachers, loved ones, and guides. I tend, especially the last year, a lot of people have been coming to me for Akashic readings for like their loved ones that crossed over, or they just appear in the reading. It never used to be like that for me. And I don't know, I'm like, is that just like really desire motivation? Because desire motivation is connected to ghosts and
Oh,
aliens.
nice. I did
I feel
not
like
know.
we talked, I thought we talked about this one time, no?
Maybe
I feel
because
like,
like I'm also desire motivation for those
yeah,
listening. And I mean, I know like I can see things from the corner of my eye. Like I know when there's a presence in the room easily.
yes. I've
Yeah.
always been that way. I was just reading actually that lecture that, well, I don't know how many he's done on this, but Ra's done lectures on the entities that are connected to the motivations in human design. And I was reading it, I think it was last week because I'm preparing for my variable intensive and I'm just like in the zone of variables right now. And I'm like, I want to go back to this lecture, and Ra was talking about, because he was also desire motivation. If anyone doesn't know, everyone's like, who's Ra? Ra is the founder of human design. His name is Ra Uruhu. And so he downloaded the system Human Design, and he was a manifester, and he was also desire motivation. Motivation is connected to those 4 arrows at the top of your Human Design chart. If you don't know what that is, I want to give a little context.
Yes.
As a 1-3, I'm always like, in case you don't know what the hell we're talking about, at least let me throw you a nugget.
Yeah.
But Human Design has these 4 arrows up at the top of your chart. Highly recommend going to, a place to look it up. The easiest place is probably Genetic Matrix, because a lot of times you can pull like at least one free chart to see like where the variables are. And so they explain basically in a nutshell your unique path to purpose, and your motivation is the gift that you're here to share with the other. It's your outer authority. And so Ra was also desire motivation. And so he was talking about with this class that he would see. I was like, oh my God, it wasn't just me. Like, I haven't talked about this with anybody. So I'm really excited. I've just been reading it, and then it just like it popped back into my head. Anyways, so he's describing how when he was younger, there would be like these shadows and like beings that would float around his wall, like dance around his room at night and stuff. Holy shit. I had the exact same experience.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Did you used to see little shadows when you were younger? Do you remember?
So what I do remember when you said that was, I remember once I was in my room and I saw a shadow from my parents' room, and I went into them and I was like ready to be like, mommy, and there was nobody there. And yeah, so that was like the first time that's happened that I remember. Obviously I don't know, like when I was much younger,
Yeah.
then I was like a little bit more aware, so I was like like maybe 10, 11 when that happened.
Oh no, I remember back to when I was like 4.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it was always like that until I feel like there was one day that I said, I don't want to see this anymore.
Yeah, you
And
can see that. Yeah.
I stopped seeing it as much. But I feel like ever since I've tapped back into that person, they're starting to appear again. And Raw actually also said, not to make this a Raw conversation, or Raw said, I feel like that gets kind of redundant and annoying to some people. But anyways, we're going to continue to be annoying. But he talked about also that the voice, like Uruhu, is a ghost that lived inside of him.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's the
find
voice.
it's like I find it so interesting you brought this up, because there was a point a longest time where I didn't see anything. And I think it was, again, I shut it off, right? It's like it's your ego, it's your consciousness that is like, I don't like, it's scary, especially when you don't know what it is. But I do know that the minute I started tapping into my intuition and started my spiritual journey and really like focusing on that and understanding what felt right and what didn't, like I've opened that up. So now I know when there's something here, but I know if it's positive, neutral, or negative. And then if it's positive or neutral, I just let them be. I'm like, yeah, you guys are cool, like all good. And then if it's negative, then that's when I'll try and cleanse the room and just be like, yeah, you need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was once there was once, it was a crazy, a frame like painting flew off the wall. And then there was another time where my egg, like it was like on the table, it wasn't like in a slanted position or anything, and it just randomly moved and fell on the floor and broke.
Yeah, I've had stuff like that happen.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I feel like, but I kind of feel like these are more the fairies. We're getting into weird conversations here, but this is the
I love it though.
4320, the Genius to Freak channel. Can't help it. Wait, where was I going with that? Now I lost my train of thought because I'm like trying to like apologize for being weird. Which nobody should do. Do
No,
not apologize for being weird.
no.
Okay. Everybody's weird. What is normal? Um, oh, where I was going with this was that sometimes things will like hide things from me. And I'm
Mm,
just like, is that a ghost or is that a fairy? I also randomly started growing pumpkins in my front yard.
no.
Yeah, I have no idea why. I feel like it's just an initiation into my witchiness. I don't know,
That's
but
interesting
it's really
because
strange.
I do know I lose things, and I actually use my pendulum
Mm-hmm.
to find them.
Yeah.
And then they get like misplaced, and then it's like it'll be in a spot where like because I'll like walk around and I'll like kind of have it like be like, is it near here? Like, yes, no. And then yeah, I'll walk around the space until like I find it. And then sometimes it'll be like, yeah, it's here. And I'm like, but I can't see it. And they're like, it's another dimension. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yes. Yes.
And then
I
it
really,
reappears, and
yes.
then it reappears in the spot that I had checked.
Yes. When that happens, I really do get creeped out. I'm like, this is how you know, like, we're not like alone. There's other things happening at the same time that we just can't see. Like in Kabbalah, they say that you only see 1% of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
The 99% is the unknown. And, but it's still happening simultaneously as this 3D realm is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we're all experiencing everything at once, but the other parts of ourselves are not just, they're not in communication with wherever else we're going or the other beings that are also here.
And I feel like there's just like only so much we know, and then also only so much we're ready to see. I think that is also
Mhm.
really
Oh,
big.
that is, oh, yes. I love
That
that you
is,
brought that up, that we're ready to see.
yeah, because if you're not consciously ready to see it, or if like let's say you are even listening to this podcast and you're not ready to hear this, your ego is going to automatically shut it down,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
saying it's
Exactly.
not real, it's not, it's fake, or it's false news, or et cetera, right? Like anything. And it's normal as a human being to do that if we're not ready for something.
Yeah. Means like it's such a, there's such a fine line with a lot of stuff that you see or hear that are the, other realms and like quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and like even those like tiny subatomic particles, neutrinos, a lot of this stuff has been proven by science. I am like, there is like, I'm like the weirdest person in the world that I just talked about all this weird stuff. But there's also this part of me is like, I feel like there's an in between science and this other aspect that can't be explained at
Yeah.
the same time.
Well, I think what was it? There was that movie, oh my God, where it related with quantum physics and the quantum world. And it was like based in the future. And this guy went into, oh my God, I wish I knew what the movie was called.
Mm.
But he went into like literally the quantum world, like the 4D and the 5D. And he like in order to create this new world because the earth was like, not doing well because of global warming, and like there was like sand, dust,
Mm-hmm.
storms. And so it's just interesting, like even just watching that movie, like I know like movies are movies, but movies are also really big nuggets for like little things that we
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
For sure. I think that it's almost like another world has created these movies that we get to watch, but we think they're fake, but maybe they're not so fake. Or maybe there's like stuff that intertwines with our past and our future in some of these movies, like where you see things like, oh, they should have done that, or like that seems very futuristic, and then it's like, and then it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like the Marvel movies, I find those ones, there's a lot of like, in terms of spirituality and quantum
Yeah. Oh,
health
yeah.
and like parallel universes, like there's a lot of nuggets in there. obviously it's still a movie, but I think that if you like just listen or see it, you see those like small little moments and you're like, ah, I see something here. Like you might be onto something. And I find that is just
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much that we know, but we also know nothing. I feel like this is like the theme of right now. What is it? The 47 is in the sun,
Yeah.
right?
And it's a line 4 day, which I thought was
The
pretty,
fourth. Oh, yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I thought was
22 is in there.
interesting.
Yeah, on
Interesting
a fourth
line.
line day.
Sorry.
Said fourth line day. This is a great day to do a podcast interview.
Yeah. And it's really
That
funny
you,
because all my podcast interviews have been on line 4 days without even me planning them.
you know, I really think that people need to pay a little bit more attention to the transits and to the lines of the day, especially like maybe like, because that's a good place to start that not
Mhm.
a lot of people talk about. I talk about it, I guess, enough, and I honestly think I need to talk about it more. But the lines of the day can really depict almost like how things are going to play out.
Yeah.
Like on a fourth line day, you're probably going to be doing a lot of connecting in
Mhm.
some way, whether it be getting on a podcast. Are you bringing somebody on your podcast? Or I just had somebody reach out to me right before I got on here, but that I haven't talked to in a while. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, she's doing that because it's a fourth line day. It's like things like that happen, or like third line days. I know we've talked about this. People seem to go through chaotic moments and like upheaval in some way. And I'm just like, I'm fine because I'm a third line. And that's also, it's important to realize how you act and how comfortable you actually feel and things that you'll do innately, like how you keep scheduling things on fourth line days, because it's part of your system. Like I do feel a lot of times more comfortable. And I've noticed I have a lot of more serendipitous moments
Mhm.
on third line days. And my unconscious sun is in gate 46, which is a very serendipitous gate and channel. And so, yeah, I feel like these are just things that people need to pay attention to because it can really help you kind of like one, ease the mind, like let the mind kind of surrender to the experience more and become a passenger. Because if you kind of have at least a sense of how the day is going to go, like understanding like us having these philosophical conversations or really weird heady type conversations because gate 47, which is in the ajna, is in the sun right now.
All right. Yeah, and I love that you brought the human design transits because I follow like astrological transits and I've been like tapping into the human design ones and just playing around with them, getting curious with it. And so if you can explain like just like a brief like for those who are aware of human design but may not know necessarily what the human design transits are, can you explain like briefly like a little bit of like what it is?
Mm-hmm. So it's very similar to if you've heard about astrology transits, where the signs are traveling through the planets and providing like some sort of story. It's like the storyline, basically, like the storyline of humanity, the storyline of where we started, where we're going, what the present moment. The planets are constantly moving and we are moving with the planets. And so human design similar to astrology where they're traveling through the astrological signs and aspects and all of those things. In human design, they're traveling through the gates. So maybe you've heard of gates in human design. If you look at your human design chart, you'll see that all the planets are holding gates. That was literally a snapshot from the transits of what was happening at that exact moment you entered into this world.
Yeah.
So, and it's constantly in movement. Like, for example, the moon moves through signs every 2.5 days. And in the human design transits, they move through the gates that are also connected to the I Ching about 2 to 3 times a day. So it's a lot of things are moving a lot quicker and they're very specific. Like how I said, we're having these weird, like more intellectual type conversations or like weird heady type conversations because gate 47 in the ajna is looking for almost like details to sort through from the head and to kind of organize them. Things that don't quite make sense. I like the, like that full channel is like the channel of confusion.
Yeah.
And so it's like right now we're asking all these weird unknown questions because they're confusing topics that people are constantly talking about that want to figure out.
Yeah.
So if you know that you're going to like be in this, like I have a completely open head, so I've been having with these head and ajna gates that keep coming in for the last week a lot of head pressure. And so that's also good to know, like things like that, because are like random, like outbursts of emotion sometimes is because maybe you're a non-emotional like me and you just connected to an emotional channel in the transits. And now you're going to be batshit crazy for 3 days. And it's like, it's nice to know those things, and there's also like a lot of positive ways to look at it because you can use them. Like, let's say you have a business, you can do launches according to the transits. And that's been really helpful that I started doing probably about like a year and a half ago. And it's really helped like ease a lot of any like types of maybe bumps that I could have maybe gotten myself into or whatever. Or there's more cosmic energetic openings
Yeah.
and take those days, you know? So
Yeah, I love that you explained that. Thank you so much. And I've noticed myself, so I'm like in like almost like at the beginning, like process of following the transits. And I have like the app which you recommended, the
mhm.
neutrino
Yes,
design.
that's a really good app.
And I love it because that one, the transits is free. So
Oh,
obviously,
it is?
like, yeah. So
Oh,
you,
I didn't know that.
yeah, so you can't like obviously when you click on the gates and any of that, you have to pay for it. But
Mhm.
just the view of the transit chart with your chart, that's actually free, which is really cool because
Oh,
no other website I know even gives you like unless you just go and look at the transits that are happening now, but there's no other one that combines it with your chart for free. So that's the only one that
oh.
gives you
Yeah, I
that.
paid for it. You should consider because I think it's like 30 something dollars for the entire year. And they give you a lot. Like they are, I'm like, who invented this app? Was it like a defined heart generator? Because they are over givers on this app. And I don't, can you scroll through the full 30 days as well or no?
I think so. I'm pretty
Okay, because that's a
sure.
new thing that they keep adding new things. And I was like, that's so smart that they because
Yeah.
I've been doing it manually. And then I'll even have like a program in my calendar because I'm crazy with the transits. Just I'm sure you guys have probably gathered that at this point. But um I have a program in my calendar on my phone that tells me all the gates and planets
I love that.
by
Yeah.
the day.
And I
So
find like just using that because I already know like the gates, like I can refer to the book because I have the book for the gates and I know like the lines. And then sometimes it's just like for me to quickly to know what's going on, especially when my like when the transits lined up for me to have like a defined sacral. So to have that extra
mhm.
energy as a projector, right? Not normally having that, and then kind of noticing, oh, I have this, but then also how can I be mindful because it doesn't
Right.
mean that I need to like actually use that energy just because it's in the transits, because then I could still overwork and burn out and get.
Yes.
So it's being very mindful, and that's what I appreciate a lot about understanding the transits and just knowing like there's so much we do subconsciously, and human design just brings it out to like be like, oh, I get it. And
Hmm.
like as you said, today is like a line 4 day. I just checked before we got on this call and I was like, it's a line 4 day, but I didn't know it at all day. And I was messaging all my friends back in Montreal because I'm going for a visit. at the end of the month and I'm messaging them all to make plans.
That's funny.
I'm like, if that's not a line 4 day, I don't know what is.
Yeah, people are more. I mean, if you think you also, the best way to understand how the lines are playing out by the day is what are the themes of the line? The themes of the fourth line are friendliness, right? Connection, networking, like looking at what are the themes of that particular line and then just watching or writing it if you can.
Yeah.
Or on a lot of most likely you were doing it unconsciously. But I'll tell you, I find it a lot more fun to have a little bit of awareness of it. Sometimes I'll even forget. Like I'll look at it in the morning and then I'll there's something about the transits that I feel like we're not supposed to be like fully tapped in to like, oh, it is a fourth line day and just having that. But sometimes it's like nice to let yourself kind of forget a little bit and just like, yeah, I checked, but then somehow it turned off and I just kept going, but unconsciously I was doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just it's it's helpful to also like it's also helpful to look back at like past patterns of behavior. Like if you have gone through some hard periods, you can look those dates right up and see what was going on in the transits and you might, maybe do some healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like during like I think I've said this before, like on my Instagram and like podcasts, is that, during hard periods, that is like such a good like breadcrumb for you to begin healing.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously sometimes we're not always ready. And then again, it's our
Yeah.
own personal choice. But if it's like, if you remember and you weren't ready to heal, then you can, as you said, go back to it. And the beauty of human design is it gives you that signpost. It gives you like where to go, how to start it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
even I have combined it sometimes with my inner healing with gene keys. So like
Yeah.
if I know that there's a certain gate that I need to look at, I will look at the gene keys of that gate and look at the shadow and
Yeah.
and then dive deeper in that, right? Because the shadow's where you learn. The shadow's where you like
Mutate.
you kind of like
Yeah.
sit with it and you embrace it and you kind of acknowledge it. Like it's like then that self-love and compassion comes in for yourself. And then once you've accepted the shadow, then the gift comes into play. But obviously that doesn't happen overnight. Well,
Not you like not. I mean, it
sometimes it
depends on
can.
it depends on your awareness.
Yeah.
It depends on a lot of layers. Like someone that's probably an emotional, they might need to sit with that for a lot longer.
Yeah.
If it can take times of repeating the same patterns over and over through the wave,
Mhm.
like through if you have awareness of it, be like, okay, I have awareness that this is part of my pattern. And then you watch it. And then sometimes you got to watch it again because they're constantly collecting data. For me as a sacral generator, if anybody cares to know, I'm a 1-3 sacral generator. As a sacral generator, if I'm in response, it's now.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no waiting, but I probably had to go through some challenging moments or work before that. But once I commit to the growth, yeah, it might be painful, but I'm gonna walk through it because that's the only way to get to the next level of
Yeah.
self.
Yeah. And I didn't know this, but I think it was Leah who told me about the 2-4 that it just is sometimes with even if you have a 2-4 profile, it takes like more than once a pattern to come in, even
Mm,
as a projector, because you don't have like the momentum to fully push the boulder over the hill to
yeah, and
figure
jump
it
to the
out. And
next
then,
lily pad.
yeah, because I have one of the gates from the spleen, gate 44, which is the one
Mm,
in patterns and past repeating itself. And so again, like I notice patterns. I know when a pattern starts, I'm like, I know from the beginning, I'm like, here it is, it's happening. And then
mm,
obviously in the very beginning of it, I used to resist and not wanting to happen again, I'll try to do everything to avoid it. But now knowing that gate and understanding that gate, I'm like, okay, bring it on. What am I supposed to learn here?
Yeah.
And then with that 2-4 of going kind of like a little bit back forth, I'm like, okay, the lesson's coming back up. I'm supposed to learn something here.
Yeah. Now, 44 is also pertains to like your history. So it's like if you really want to know how to break a habit or a pattern, like go look at your, like your childhood, most likely. That's
Yeah.
usually when the first pattern started.
Yeah. That is true. Well, that's why I also focus my business on inner child healing, right? Because
Mhm.
it's what I went back with what I had to learn. So
Exactly.
back to my childhood to figure out where the pattern stemmed from,
Where's your 44
which
planet? Yeah.
I believe
I don't remember at the moment
I
where
have it.
where it was.
Pluto.
Oh,
Pluto.
oh,
Uh,
true,
Death and rebirth.
true.
Yay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
truth. It's like,
Subconscious and conscious. And it's the I believe the so this is what's interesting too. Um it's going the subconscious is in line 3 and then the
mhm.
conscious is in a line 6.
So there's like an evolution to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like and then when you look at my birth chart, um being a Scorpio, it's in my
Hmm.
8th house. Yeah, the Scorpio, the sun is in my 8th house, my Pluto's in Scorpio in my
Oh,
8th
wow.
house. Yeah. So there's like a lot of that death and rebirth, but like learning, relearning and learning about like my patterns and what I'm meant to heal. So I had to go through and still do. I go through a lesson more than once
Mm.
to learn it. But once I learn a piece of it, I level up and I'm quick at that. I'm quick at leveling up. And I think that's like from the Aries being my rising. So like very fast, like, okay, we did that, death and rebirth. Okay, let's go move on.
Yeah, you're good about going into the dark. I noticed that with you, which I tend, I guess because all of my like the majority of my planets sit in the 12th house, that I attract a lot of people that are comfortable to go to the dark and to go deep and to go through all those weird past patterns of self.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
One
it's all interesting.
it's one of my favorite conversations. That is just again, it's one of those things as a projector, the invitation has to be there.
Oh, yeah.
And I always ask, like, especially when they do invite me, I'm like, they're like, oh, I want to learn about this. I'm like, okay, but are you sure?
Yeah.
Because every time I'm like I give them a warning. And
Mm,
usually what happens is like in the conversation, people are amazed, right? Because people crave it. People like, well, that's one thing I've learned. People do crave it because it's not everybody's talking about things in the depths.
yeah.
And so when I have these conversations, people are like, oh my God. And they're like, whoa, like you went deep, like, whoa, like that's so cool. And they appreciate it, but then I don't hear for them for like 2-3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, they're processing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, okay, see you guys in 2-3 weeks. Cool. Enjoyed this conversation. Go process, heal, analyze. And then yeah, like sometimes like even if I run into them before that and they still haven't like, especially if they're emotional authorities and they haven't ridden a
Oh,
wave, they're like so awkward. They're like, hey,
yeah. Interesting.
it is. It's really interesting. Like I never really understood why it was like that again until I came across human design in my astrology chart. And I'm like, there it is. There it is. And
You're
I just
also
don't
a
take it.
projector, though, that your aura is like penetrating. So I imagine someone that is processing still, they're not going to want you digging around.
No, no. And it's like, and I don't do it like again, like, human design. as you know, is like there is that subconscious element of it that it's like I don't sit there and penetrate people's aura purposely.
No, no, you don't. You guys don't
Like, and
even
I'm
know
not.
you're doing it. The best is when I do in-person readings and it ends up being with a projector. And I'm just like, I call them out. I say, I just want to let you know you're locked in right now. And they go, they're just like that because they know this about themselves, but they don't know when they're like doing it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's but
Have
you
you
all do it.
have you done a reading with a reflector?
Yes, not a lot, but I have. That it's never you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I find like yeah, I was gonna ask you like because I only know one reflector in person right now. I actually met him um yeah, about a couple of months ago. Like yeah, it's like almost yeah, about 6 months ago. And now I kind of like do some work for him. And it's just
Oh,
really interesting to be in his energy. And then what
yeah.
who else is around his energy and how he shifts. It's really interesting.
Yes. Yes. I had a reflector friend that I met before I moved here. Um, I had done some readings for her too. She was actually, I think she was the first reflector I read for. And she was just so amazing with being able to like mirror back exactly what's going on with you and then the people around her. And she's I think she's a Taurus. So she's very grounded in herself, but like they really need a lot of alone time.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
And that's the thing is that like this friend, I don't think he gets it so much. And it's just it is really interesting to see how he mirrors everything. Like when it's just me and him, the energy is so calm.
Oh, that's because you're being calm.
Yeah. So calm, it's quiet. Sometimes he'll throw in some music, but like we don't talk. He does his thing, I do my thing. But then when there's certain other people around, he gets riled up. He's an Aries too. So
Yeah, so it depends. I think it is important for reflectors to look at their astrology because that'll at least give like, okay, I'm a little more a fiery reflector as opposed to the Taurus reflector I was just talking about. She was very chill. She seemed very grounded and like she was really into the earth. Like she had like a horse farm and like yeah, so I do think that that plays a role and that reflectors should be looking at, especially the transits too, because they are the most impacted by the transits, reflectors.
yeah. And then I think one thing with reflectors that I'm learning with him is that he changes his mind constantly. Again,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Lunar
Yeah.
cycle. And it's like because I help him out with some work, I'm like, sometimes it's just like there's a plan and then that plan changes. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
God. And I'm like, I know it's because he's a reflector. And I'm a Scorpio, so I'm fixed. And it's sometimes I don't like change.
Yeah.
So it's being able to like sit with that and honor his cycle too.
And he might have been maybe one of his parents were like a manifester or something, and like part of his conditioning to not finish or just being like an open or undefined heart, like, and him being so open on top of that, it's like sometimes he doesn't want to finish it.
Yeah.
That's like also like a non-sacral thing. I think the probably the energy type of non-sacrals that does that more of trying to be the generator and like I have to finish the from start to finish is probably the projector. You guys are seem to be very generator conditioned, I guess, because you guys are constantly penetrating us that it's like, of course you're gonna act like us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, there's just, yeah, it's majority of the population.
Yeah.
And even I know sometimes like, yeah, a little bit of that Manny Gen too, right? Because like projectors wanting to initiate, right? Wanting to like kind of like put like start because we're like, we see it, we want to fix everything. It's like
Yeah,
knowing to take a step back. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Energy dynamics. I feel like if you really want to understand energetics, you look at human design. It'll make your relationships better.
Oh, hands down, hands down. And it's just even like just having my friends' charts.
Yeah, no, everybody needs to give me their birth information. If you want to be around me, if you don't want me to tell you after I got the information, you will have to tell me that too. And I will ask, I'll say, just let me know how much you're willing to hear, because if you don't care, then it's every day. So just be prepared that if you want to be in my life, that I will need all your information,
Yeah.
and I'll also need to explain it to you from time to time.
I love that. That
Otherwise,
is
get
like
out.
that is like a classic like open throat too.
Yeah. If you don't want to hear it, then you should probably leave, because I want to share it. And
Yeah.
I need you to be okay with that. I feel like I have, like, what I think people also don't understand about human design is that it is an antisocial experiment.
Yeah.
It's simply just an experiment. Everything we're talking about here does not need to be taken as any sort of fact. It's just a try. If you resonate, try it out. That's basically how it works. If you like it, see if it works for you. If it is part of you, don't just be like, oh, I want to try out being a manifester. That's not what I mean. If that is not your design type, do not try it on. But if you find out that you're a generator and you're hearing about some things that I'm talking about with being a generator and you relate, then start watching it. See how it shows up for you. I think the easiest way to understand human design is by examples and stories. That's the easiest way to understand this information, I
Yeah,
believe.
and there is no one size fits all, like especially in human design, because there are so many layers to it. And I remember you were the one who told me, because I was like, oh yeah, like I sleep so well next to my partner. And as a projector, we're supposed to sleep well on our own. And
Yeah.
you were the one who showed me my sleep chart, and you're like, you're a Manny Gen when you sleep. And I'm like, wait, what? So it's
Yeah.
like there are so many layers to human design. And yes, there's like obviously like the overview of each of the types. There's the, definition of each of the types and, who you are. But once you look into the deeper depths, like you'll find certain things that I would say, like, not contradict, but may not be for you, even though that's
Yeah.
the overall definition of the type. And that's okay. This is where the experiments is where trying something on and seeing what works, what doesn't.
Yeah. I feel like when Ra talks about generators a lot, it's like how you guys think we are, and not necessarily how we actually always are. Like for him to say that generators go uh-huh and uh-uh, I do not do that a lot. I do it? Sure. But I also see non-sacrals doing it too. Because from just like, but I understand that when I am doing that, that it is through a response with those sounds, but I also do a lot of this or a lot of this. And sometimes I have no awareness, like my mind's saying yes, but my body's telling me no, like that song. Um, it's like that. Like response makes zero sense. There is no mental process to response.
No.
And it's all nuanced and it's all different and it's all individual. So not every generator is built the same. And so it's important to have the foundation. I think source material is extremely important. I say that as a 1-3. I know not all other profiles think that, or just people, but I think that you do need to start at the foundation. And then whatever you want to do after that, I guess, is up to you. But I would definitely explore the foundation, and then like how I explored like observing the way my response works. And it's not always and like I really, that one especially, I really don't do. But sometimes I go, like I'm like, okay, so maybe it's not but maybe it's like a version of that. It's just like, just get the foundation and then observe. And
Yeah.
maybe yours is just a little different, but it's still a yes or it's still a no, but yours just might be a little different.
Yeah, and I've noticed too, like with some generators, that it's not even that it's actually sometimes just a flat out no.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
No,
ask. Just
like
ask
it's
a question.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing I notice is that I know from a generator, especially if it's like a vocal yes or no, I know when they're overthinking it and when they're not, right? Because if it's quick, especially non-emotionals, if it's quick, you know that's like that's the sacral coming and being voiced out, right? But then it's like if there's like a little bit of like trying to think about it or vocalizing the thoughts, right? Of like, well, if I do this and then maybe it might show like this. And then you're like, okay, now
Yeah.
you're over
Oh, I
analyzing.
know. I actually, my eyes actually, I notice for myself will start going up here. And I'll look, I mean, it's like I'm searching because the thing is, response is honestly through your environment. And so, and it could be through your environment of you interacting with another individual. They're asking you yes or no questions. It could be someone throws you a ball and you catch it. That is response. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So but it can't come from your thoughts. And so sometimes I'm like looking for a response up on the ceiling. And that's when I know that I'm in my head and not in my body. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as a defined head, I can really like I can catch it when someone is like, oh, especially open undefined heads when they are in their minds, and I'm like, whoa, like, no, 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 authority. What's your authority saying? Go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, go back to your body. And it's just like it's so interesting because it's almost like I call them like it's when someone is overthinking and they're vocalizing, it's like a run-on sentence.
Oh yeah. I got a lot of those.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, there it is. There it is. There it is.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
sometimes if like I'm really excited about the response, those things start happening a lot faster. Maybe I'm talking a lot faster. Um, so but the energy changes and like also we go through like lulls and like plateaus. And like I was in one for like most of the summer due to some circumstances and like just the energetics, like in the transits and stuff. And I'm just like, oh, like this fucking sucks. Like I do not do well sitting still. Like that's just I mean, I like sitting down, but like I need to know that there's things happening around me or that if I want to get up, I can get up. But if like I feel like the universe is like, take a seat, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ah, okay, what do I do? What do I do? Because I need to do something. Because we
Yeah.
always need to do something.
Yeah. What I like to do in those moments, I like to say, like, there's things happening that I cannot see, and I trust that. But sometimes that's obviously easier said than done,
Oh
especially
yeah.
in the moment, in the moment. But
Yeah.
it's like something I try to tell myself, like even yeah, I've had like a lot of unknown with my business also, like towards the end of the summer, like even right now, like there's still a little bit of fogginess, and I'm like,
Yeah. It's gonna
trust,
be the end
trust.
of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
things
We're
are
not really
happening
gonna get
that
out of with the retrogrades that are happening right now, which Mercury is about to go direct, which Mercury I honestly don't worry about a lot, except for when we do have these like summer moments where everything's retrograde. And I'm like, well, now you've come to fuck some shit up. And it was very like digging this time. Like I feel like we're always kind of digging through Mercury retrograde, like mentally, but it was like digging to refine, like digging to really look for the holes in things right now, or where we miss like really miss something, but like it was a long time ago, or like it's like weird little things that I'm like, wow, how did I not see that? Or what, like I keep saying to myself, which I feel like happens during Mercury retrograde, but it's about like, how did I not see that? Now, how can I do better? Or how can I fix it?
yeah,
Because it happened during, with Venus retrograde. I feel like Venus really brought up a lot on our values with this one. Like, not that it doesn't, but like really like relationship values. And
Mhm.
like, are these relationships reciprocal?
Yeah.
Are they serving the self?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
like yeah,
yeah,
like Venus retrograde brought that up. Like, yeah, the values, also like the values towards myself and
yeah.
how I treat myself. And
Mhm.
then yeah, now and then it's kind of like going into Mercury. You were bang on with what you said with Mercury. Like that is exactly what's happening. And I think it happening in Virgo season. So again,
Yeah.
like fix it. And that's what I'm feeling I'm going through right now. It's literally it was things I am gonna actually do a podcast episode about it because there's a lot I want to talk about, but it was something I avoided out of fear. And I knew I
Mhm.
was avoiding it. I was very self-aware I was avoiding. And then now it's like it's popped up to being like, oh no, now I have to deal with it. And I put my big girl pants on,
Yeah.
I'm dealing with it. And like and navigating it and being like, okay, like let's get myself to a better place. And it's really funny because where Mercury is transiting on my birth chart, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
I'm like, of
Which is
course.
also good to be looking at, like, how, if it's like, yeah, it's nice to hear, like, I do transit reports on my podcast,
Mhm.
and it's nice to hear what's going on with the collective, but then you need to kind of like personalize it, because where Mercury's transiting your chart and your themes that are coming up during your Mercury retrograde might not be the same themes that are coming up for me.
Exactly.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, like transiting my ninth house is spirituality. And like, I feel like expansion in a lot of ways now that Jupiter's gone retrograde. And it's like, how can I expand my thoughts and ideas right now? How can I really refine my messaging when it comes to like my spiritual voice and what I do for work? Like, it's just been really this, I feel like this Mercury retrograde, maybe it's because of all the things that are playing out for me personally, has really expanded my viewpoint. Like, I feel like there's been a lot of narrow focus in a lot of ways. I've really dropped the ball in certain fact of it was just like circumstantial. But that I can I can work through it. There's another way to go. Like, I recently got a reading from somebody that told me that it's kind of looks like I've climbed this like big mountain, but I didn't get all the way to the top. But that's because there's something down at the bottom I have to go back down to, and I actually have to now go up a different way. And I was like, ah, that's exactly how I feel. So thank you for telling me I have to go back down to the bottom.
Yay.
So,
Um,
yeah,
and I love that you explained it in that way about the retrogrades because I did do like recently a bunch of stories on my Instagram and I actually got a really positive response from it. And wanted to like I want to bring it up now just because of how you explain the retrogrades. And I thought it was a very neutral standpoint, which I think is important because I do find that sometimes when it comes to retrogrades, full moons, eclipses,
yeah,
any big shifts, people like I've seen it in the social media world where people focus on the negative, like, oh, Venus
yeah,
retrograde breakups, oh,
yeah,
Mercury retrograde, like, and it's always focused on the negative, or they'll like related to something that happened in the past during that time that was negative. And they're like, well,
yeah,
this time 20 thousands of years ago, this thing, negative thing happened. And so now we're going into it now and it's all doom and gloom. And
yeah,
it's like, one, like we're not the same society species were 10,000
yeah,
years ago. But also, even if you put that on the more present level, you're not the same person you were
yeah,
6 months ago, a year ago, yesterday, etc. So I kind of brought this up. I'm like, retrogrades can be amazing. They can
yeah,
require a lot of healing. Sometimes shit can come up, but it's
yeah.
not always doom and gloom. It's not always
No.
negative. And I think it is really important to highlight that, because I feel this retrograde, like, yeah, I'm dealing with stuff, I'm fixing it, but I'm not like, oh, like it's all shit. Like, no, it's like actually, as you said, it's expansion and it feels
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So it's just like that's something that's been coming up for me a lot of like what I'm noticing. You know, we all say the news are negative. I'm like, well, sharing about retrogrades in this way is the same thing.
Yeah, there's positive and negative aspects both happening at the same time. It's like I always look at, okay, so this part seems like it's on the bottom, but there's always the flip side on the other end. Like I feel like this is like my power view mixed with being a Sagittarius, you
Mhm.
know? Like I just all and having like an undefined ajna, like there's always it's all like something that they used to say when I worked at the Kabbalah Center was all the time, didn't matter what was happening, good, bad, chaotic, negative, it didn't matter. They would always just say, it's all good. And what they were saying was, is that it's for our highest good. Whatever is happening right now is for your highest good. And I'd be like, all good. I'm like, we're in fucking chaos here, people. Yeah. But
But it is,
it's
it is. It just
it is.
it
It is.
feels sucky in the
I'm like,
moment.
damn it. How is this all good to me? But I think we sign contracts a lot of times before we get here. And sometimes you can decide in the moment. That's why we have free will to break the contract or whatever it is, to go through that experience. But usually they're meant for something even like the hard ones, like especially relationship contracts, like that can become really sometimes toxic. Like I look at a lot of undefined spleens. Also want to preface, I'm not a therapist, so don't. I'm just this. I do know a lot of psychology. I went to school for it, but I'm not a therapist. I just like to people to know that I'm not a therapist and don't ask those things or like say how are you, why are you explaining it like that? I don't know because this is all psychological. You know,
Yeah.
it's self-care in the weirdest form,
Mhm.
you know, like it literally is. But we all go through these challenging moments oftentimes because part of our soul chose that. Now maybe other things led up to that in a different, like it does, like you don't have to go exactly the way that your soul chose if you choose. But at the same time, something on the other side of you said, I wanted to have this experience, even if it's really dark. Like
Yeah.
I've been watching some, I got clickbaited on something about this one mom that did some dark stuff. And I cannot, like, I don't know if it's because we're all up here for the last week or so. I cannot stop watching more information about it. My first line of my open head's like, this is like, I want to do an analysis on her chart. Like, that's where I'm at with this. And I don't have that kind of time or really energy to do it. But every time I have like a moment in like the bathroom, I'm like watching a 10-minute clip on this woman's situation that's happening right now. And I can't stop.
It's funny, like what the, you know, like what we get intrigued by and what we're like, oh, but we need to know, even though it's like has nothing
You
to
know, I
do.
probably should just put it down at this point,
Yeah.
but I'm driving in the car. I'm like, there was like I'm talking 7-hour YouTube interview
Wow.
about this person. Like it's bit like I'm not going to get into it because it's some dark stuff and it's not, and it's just like we're not going to get into it. But I'm just saying, like the things that we like can tend to gravitate towards or travel down. It's wild, especially also because I'm so open up here and because we've had all this definition up here. It's like back to where you said having the awareness around knowing when you're probably going to feel that sacral like pressure in your sacral to continue to go, 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 go. When if you have the awareness of it, you cannot be fooled by the matrix, which is the transits.
Exactly. And I love that. Yeah, I love that you just like said that. And on that note, I'm thinking this is a beautiful time to wrap this up. And I would love for you to share how people can find you, any offers you currently have right now. I'm just going to give you the microphone.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. You can find me, probably the easiest place is Journey Through HD on Instagram. That's where you can navigate through to my website, which is also, humandesignastroclub.com. And I also have a whole nother human design business with that called the Human Design and Astro Club. I have a podcast. You can look it up. I also have a YouTube channel that is mostly our podcast on there. If you like what I talked about with the transits, you'll like my podcast. So you can go to that website and find everything, or you can go to Journey Through HD. Human Design Astro Club is my other account. I'm sorry, I have a lot of things, but my biggest thing probably right now is, if I know you probably heard us talk about the variables briefly. If you've been in your human design experiment for a while, I do have a few spots left for my variable intensive, which is a 5-week journey through the 4 radical transformations, which are called the variables that are your unique path to purpose. And we kind of each week do a Zoom call and we have experiments with the variables. We talk about what the variables actually mean and how to use them in a practical way. And we have a community page that also goes along with it. You get a lot of things. You can find that out on humandesignastroclub.com, or feel free to DM me at Journey Through HD. And yeah, that's what I got going on.
Amazing. And I'm going to include all that in the show notes. So if you were listening and you didn't have time to write it all down, it's going to be in the show notes, all the links, like all the Instagram, the website, and just everything, just to make it easier for our listeners. And yeah, thank you so much. I love this conversation. It went in all different angles, and it really did. But I feel like that's just our conversations in general when you talk. So thank you for being here and sharing yourself, your gifts, all of it. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.